So we recently hit a net worth of over $100,000, and to be completely honest with you and to give you the short version, basically we put in a lot of hours, we made a lot of intentional decisions, and the one thing of course that you can't forget about is a little bit of luck. Now, if you're interested in hearing more, stick around because we're gonna give you the full journey right now. All that we're asking for in return is that you consider liking down below and you subscribe, and yeah, enjoy the video. So to kick things off, I think it's really important for us to start at the point at which me and Steph had just graduated school and we're just about to start our full-time job. So let's say like mid 2018. And now the reason I think that's a really great place to start is because even though me and Steph had like part-time jobs and side hustles and all these other jobs that we've talked about before when we were younger, even though we had all those jobs that created a great foundation, those aren't the jobs that actually got us like the real bag. So let's start things off at what I would like to call day one. So when me and Steph graduated from university, we were in what I would like to call different frames of mind. So I think at the time, Steph had maybe like a few $1,000s in the bank on top of having graduated with no debt from school. While me, on the other hand, I had, let's say, like several hundreds of dollars in the bank and then $45,000 in student loan debt that I had accumulated from getting my degree. Now, what I think is cool and what kind of separates us from like your typical my first 100K video, and yes, I've seen like a whole bunch of these floating around on YouTube, is that we've actually made the bulk of our money as it relates to our net worth from our corporate jobs. And honestly, I think that speaks to like the vast majority of the population who are working regular jobs or working 9-to-5s and aren't entrepreneurs making thousands and thousands of dollars a month from their online businesses. So now to start with me, and kind of like what I was saying before, I had maybe like a couple $100s to my name at the time. So before starting the corporate work grind, kind of like everyone else, I had this like really bright idea to just take a trip to New York. So for those of you who aren't familiar with where Toronto is, it's about a 4-hour drive to Buffalo, New York, and then a 4-hour drive from there to New York City. And once again, all of this, I know this sounds kind of random, but it's gonna make sense in a second. So at this time, let's say like early May, I don't even think I'd secured a job yet, but I really wasn't freaking out that much because the interviews were coming in, I had a bunch of leads. It was more so me deciding where I actually wanted to work. Anyways, the reason that I wanted to take this trip to New York City was because I didn't have enough money to travel anywhere else that was like far. And I also wanted to have some like solid time to actually relax after graduating. So I basically spent like all of my money on this trip. Anyways, we come back from the trip and I've got no money, but I end up landing a job at one of the major banks as an associate and officially start on like my corporate work grind just like everyone else. Only now I've got $0 in the bank. So to bring things back to my mindset at the time, I was feeling a ton of stress from my student loans, mainly because it felt like this really huge burden that was just over me. And also I kept hearing from like people online and also people even in my own family who just kept saying that, you know, student loans, like don't worry about it. You know, it's not a big deal. Eventually you'll pay it off. And what's funny is that all of this is coming from people who literally were still paying off their student loans 10+ years after finishing school. So knowing all of this, also all while binging Dave Ramsey calls.
I'm calling BS. Somebody please smack me. Okay, well, you're scared and you should be.
And I mean like literally like the worst callers, but also the most entertaining ones where people would just like call in and say some of the most ridiculous things. I just knew that I didn't want that to be me. So I basically in that moment decided to just kickstart my debt-free journey and start throwing $1,300 a month towards my student loans. Now, keep in mind, at this point, I'm only making around like $50,000 a year. And for me, that was a take home of around, let's say like $2,500.
Now on my side of things, I was really just getting started with the whole world of personal finance. Like yes, I had that few $1,000s in the bank, which was really great because it helped me with my move to Toronto, getting settled in, not being too stressed about the money side of things on top of everything else. But it wasn't until I actually started my first job post-grad that I realized just how little money I was actually going to be making and bringing in an income every month. So I started that first job at a really tiny recruitment firm, didn't have any benefits. I was making $39,000 a year. It was actually an hourly rate that just converted to $39,000 a year pretty much. But at the time, even though I was making that little, it didn't bother me right away because I could still pay my rent. I could pay for groceries. I could pay for eating out. I was really focused on spending a little bit of money on different events around the city and exploring Toronto. It wasn't actually until a few months later after having the job, when I started to want to get my stuff together with my money, that I realized I didn't have much left over to actually save or invest at the end of the month. Like at the time I wasn't budgeting, and I didn't even want to look at my transactions because I knew I was spending in areas that I shouldn't have been. So eventually I got it together and started tracking my spending and budgeting and doing all of those things that I should have been doing from before. Now this is actually getting close to the time where Dan and I started posting videos on YouTube, which were obviously all about money, careers, just different things that we didn't think a lot of people were talking about at the time. But anyways, I say this because on January 2020, we posted a video about how I was going to save $25,000 in 1 year. And what was really cool about that video at the time is that I finally felt like I knew what I was doing, and I had my saving and investing more so down to a science, where I wasn't focused on just the number I could save, it was more so focused on the percentages. Now around this time, we also put out another video about how I was saving about 50% of my income. Now that was huge for me, and especially at this point because I had actually just switched companies for the first time, and I was now up to making about $60,000 a year.
Now, when I got my first job, it might have sounded really great on paper, but the reality of the situation was that these people were underpaying me on literally every single level. So we're talking salary and benefits, of which I had none. So if I'm really looking at that, and I'm also looking at the job itself, where it was a back office role, where in my opinion, it's where most careers either never got started or where most careers were sent to die, right? Like if I was looking at that, to me, I knew right away after about a week that I needed to find a new job, like ASAP. So anyways, eventually a couple months fly by and I end up landing a job at Deloitte where they were paying me just over $52,000 with a whole bunch of benefits included. Now during this time, I'm continuing to pay off my debt and I'm just attacking it every step of the way. And I would say after about a year or so, also with the help of like this $4,000 tax refund, we put out a video marking $25,000 paid off in loans, which was huge. What's interesting is that even though I was progressing on my debt-free journey, my income just didn't feel like it was enough. And if I really think back to how I was feeling then, it's probably because an entire paycheck, or pretty much an entire paycheck, was going towards just servicing this never-ending loan. Now on the flip side, if we look at what Steph was saying earlier, we were definitely moving things along on the YouTube front. Like the videos were definitely flowing at this point. The next thing we were trying to do was actually figure out how we could share our story on CNBC's Millennial Money, which was pretty much like on fire during the pandemic. Well, in June of 2020, our Millennial Money feature came out and it aligned perfectly with us being monetized. So around the same time, we got monetized on YouTube, which basically meant that anytime YouTube ran ads on our videos, we were now getting paid. What is interesting though is that I would say that things started off pretty slow on that front in terms of that revenue stream, but in 2020, we made like $4,000, and at the time, looking back, we were super pumped because all we were doing was just making videos like we had already been doing for about a year and a half or so before that. So any money that they were gonna pay us was just amazing.
Now in early January 2021, something big happened for us, and that's that a few of our YouTube videos really took off all in a row. And what was really cool about that wasn't just that they got bigger in terms of views, it's also that they started bringing in about $3,000 to $4,000 a month in YouTube AdSense. And that was a really cool realization for us because we were already making about that amount each in our corporate jobs. So to add an additional 1 month's income just from our YouTube channel coming in for a few months in a row, that was really crazy. So at this point, I was making about $66,000 after I had just switched teams internally at my same company, and I also had about $30,000 in the bank. Now, what was interesting about this too is that a couple months after, I ended up having some conversations with my manager about wanting to bring my salary up. So we were kind of having some convos back and forth behind the scenes. So good news is that a few months later, after joining that team, less than a year after joining, in April or May, which was performance review time, I was able to bring my salary up to $72,000. And what I want you guys to take away from that is if we go back to those percentages I was talking about earlier, my savings and investing buckets specifically really grew like crazy during this time because every time I got a salary increase, I put the majority of that money towards those buckets instead of anything on the expenses side of things. So anyways, by June of that year, I had saved a combined $50,000 across both my savings and my investment accounts, and that was super exciting for me, especially because I was able to hit that goal by age 25.
At this point, I'd paid down all of my student loans, so I had no debt. All of that was gone after chipping away at it over time. And then earlier in that year, I'd actually gotten a promotion and a pay increase, so I was now making $78,000 a year. And then if we look at my accounts, I had about $30,000 across my savings and my investments, which was huge. So if we go back to Steph for a second, obviously her path was very well laid out, right? Like in terms of where she was at on her journey, she was already more than halfway to that $100,000 net worth, right? So had she continued in the corporate world, she was gonna get there in no time, right? And then whereas for me on the other side, I had just previously finished paying off my debt, and I was kind of just getting started on the whole saving and investing piece. Now, I had obviously a sizable amount of money, but if we were gonna make the decision to just quit our jobs and go and do YouTube full time, then I guess the bulk of my net worth was gonna come more so from the YouTube end. Anyways, we ended up quitting our jobs that fall of 2021 and slowly got onto the content grind. So slowly started pushing out more and more content. And then if we look at even our presence on other social media sites like Instagram and TikTok, we started growing our presence on there as well, which in return also means that you're growing your presence in terms of brand deals as well. Now, by the time 2022 rolled around, our business had brought in over $100,000 in combined brand deals, affiliate revenue, and of course, ad revenue, ultimately allowing us to meet our goals. Now, the one thing that we haven't talked about in this video is our journey to $1 million.
Now, the road to $1 million is an interesting one because there's definitely a big jump between making your first $100,000 and then making it all the way up to $1 million. So we're gonna have to kind of break it down into chunks. So our future plan in order to get up to those few hundreds of thousands of dollars is gonna be by monetizing those platforms in more passive ways by creating a system for sponsorships that flow in more consistently. We obviously have our affiliate links and creating a system that really brings more attention to those as well, and obviously our new career ebook as well. So that's our plan to get to that couple of hundreds of $1,000 range, but then what's the plan to get to $1 million? Now, after focusing on the content side of our business pays off for us, literally pays off for us and increases our income, then it's on to making that big jump from hundreds of thousands of dollars stage to $1 million. What's interesting about this is that the hardest part a lot of the time is actually increasing your income to begin with. So that's what we're really focused on now. But once that happens and you've built up that big sum of money that's coming in consistently for you in income, then the world of possibilities really opens up, right? And the entire game changes. Now, our plan from there really wouldn't be to reinvent the wheel. We want to do what we've seen works for a lot of other people, right? Which is continue to make investments specifically in assets that appreciate in value, that cash flow that continue to generate money consistently for you. And that's a wrap for this video. Thanks so much for checking it out. And if you watched to this point, please give us a big like down below. It really helps us out. Please make sure you're subscribed if you haven't subscribed already. And make sure you check out some of our previous videos that we've done recently next door. There's been some big ones that you guys should definitely watch. And we'll be back soon with more.